Australia is in the midst of a transit building boom. Tens of billions of dollars are being spent on rail mega projects, and Melbourne is on board with its own new metro tunnel opening next year. But behind the walkthroughs of new stations and other media attention, there's one mode of transit often left out. The humble bus, the unglamorous workhorse relied on to carry passengers in Melbourne's sprawling outer suburbs. But in many places, buses and public transport are non-existent.
It's just like a prison. Seriously, I'm telling you that when you are living in a house, stuck in the house, you can't go anywhere.
When Saida does go somewhere, it has to be by car. Her housing estate, Mount Atkinson, about 25 kilometres west of Melbourne, doesn't have a public bus. She admits she doesn't like to drive, but she has no choice.
There's no public transport, so they are forcing us. They are forcing us to drive the car. They are not giving us any options, so that's why.
As Melbourne's population surges towards 6.5 million by 2036, these are the communities absorbing that growth. Graham Curry managed Melbourne's bus plan in the early 2000s, which led to a surge in ridership. But then, he says, the city fell behind.
Service levels haven't kept up with growth. We've actually had a decline in service level per head of population. As the population's grown, we haven't kept pace with the service level. And that's the type of thing we need just to even maintain where we are already.
And nothing, he says, drives people away from buses more than waiting for them to turn up.
There's three key things I think will increase ridership. Frequency of service, and frequency of service. On average, our buses come here about 30 to 40 minutes, even in the peak. That's how frequent our buses are. So we have planes flying between Melbourne and Sydney more frequently than that.
In the outer suburbs, the opinion of Melbourne's buses couldn't be much worse.
How would you describe the bus that you take?
Lousy. Well, I don't think it's good enough. But no, that you have to wait 1 hour for a bus.
Yeah, if you miss it, you're waiting, right?
Yeah, for another hour.
These passengers are in the minority, relying on a form of transport most Melburnians say they don't use. Only about a quarter say they ride the bus at least once a month, and only about a quarter of people agreed buses are for people like me. Those results came from a survey of 4,000 people by advisory group Infrastructure Victoria to gauge the opinion of buses.
They don't come frequently enough, they're not reliable enough, they get stuck in traffic, they don't necessarily come at the times that we expect them to, and that means that people can't rely on them to get to the things that they need to get to. If you can't rely on something, you're not going to go and use it, and I think that really contributes to the poor experience that many Melburnians have had of buses.
None of this is a surprise to the state government, in power for the last decade as Melbourne's outer suburbs grew and grew.
You need a bus. If you want to travel, if you want to go anywhere, you need it. If you are well or not well, if you want to go for a job or university or anywhere.
What about people who are living in estates who don't have bus services at all? What do you say to them?
I can say to them that we are continuing to invest and we will always have a focus on those growth areas. We will also, whether it be...
Any timeline there?
I'm not in a position to make any announcements here today. This is something that traditionally hasn't been done very well. We hear that loud and clear from some of those newer communities and those newer estates in particular.
But the problems aren't just in newer estates. In plenty of established suburbs, bus timetables seem stuck in a bygone era.
This is the 800 bus from the busy Chadstone Shopping Centre in Melbourne's southeast. It's around 4 o'clock on Saturday, and this is the last bus of the day. Glad I caught it because there isn't another one until Monday morning. This bus doesn't run on Sundays. And it's not alone. All over Greater Melbourne, there are dozens of routes where if you want to catch the bus on Sunday, you are out of luck.
That's a challenge for us, and those are the types of routes that me, with the support of my department, will look at and try and problem solve in the here and now. Is it perfect right now? Absolutely not. Have we been investing to try and deal with those pressure points, one by one? Absolutely.
The government says since it came into office in 2014, it's invested hundreds of millions of dollars and added 20,000 extra bus trips every week to improve service. It's promised a new bus plan, but there's no timetable on when it will be delivered.
A lot of other big Australian cities do have much better bus systems.
And, says Alison Stewart, for Melbourne to transform, it will take a network-wide rethink on its bus system.
That includes straightening out bus routes, increasing the frequency of bus routes, making sure that the operating hours for bus routes are suitable for the needs of people that are around the city.
Last week, the government unveiled $160 million from developer levies to pay for public transport projects in growth areas. There will be a handful of new bus routes and extensions, but once again, Saida's estate missed out.
I'm coming from another country. Whenever they built any new area, the government always give firstly their needs, and the bus is the basic need.